So who's ready for me to talk about the AFC North and how they did in the 2016 NFL Draft? Huh? Huh? Well, too damn bad. I'm doing it anyways. 4 teams, 4 kind of varying draft strategies to a degree. Some teams did well. Maybe one team didn't. And then one team is the Cleveland Browns. So let's go ahead, as always, with all of these recap videos for each division. I've got all the picks listed down below, best and worst picks, the draft grades. Let's go ahead, and I start in these videos, as always, going from the worst performance, in my opinion, to the best performance. And mind you, again, when it comes to grade, this is all very subjective. My grading is based solely off of in large part, the execution of the draft within and of itself. I know that in 2-3 years, some of these grades will be spot on. Some of these grades will be too generous, and some of these grades will be just ass off one way or another. It's going to happen, and we can look back 2 or 3 years from now and laugh about it a little bit. We'll start with the worst, though, and we still have to go with the Cleveland Browns. I'm sorry. I've never bought into this narrative, as many of you know that watch my videos and follow me on Twitter, about how this is a new day, a new era for the Cleveland Browns. This is an awful lot of the same old shit. This is the 4th time since 2009 this team has traded down big in round number 1. 4th time. Last 3 times they did it weren't all that successful. What makes the 4th go round so much more? I don't understand where people get off saying that this is something different. If you want to give a narrative about how you thought they did well, if you want to give a narrative about how you think the philosophy in terms of the picks that they did, that's a different argument to have. Now, if you want to talk about, though, the fact that this is something different, no, this is the exact same shit. Just new faces in the same place doing the same damn things. There is nothing different about this fundamentally, and everybody needs to erase that from their logic. Now, I just was not a big fan of the Cleveland Browns' performance in this draft. I'm not a fan of trading out of the 2nd overall pick when a franchise quarterback like Carson Wentz is on the board. And at the end of the day, that's what a lot of this comes down to for the Cleveland Browns. It's not even just about their own performance within this draft and then the other drafts that they were able to accumulate additional picks for. It's the fact that they could have had a chance to get a franchise quarterback, and if they didn't, and that guy was drafted by somebody else and he did, the Cleveland Browns get a big fat F no matter what. Because until they find that guy, they don't have that guy. And until they find that guy, they're never going anywhere. And I know people want to talk about next year, and they want to talk about next year, and some of the quarterbacks available next year, and the position they'll be in with 2 first-round picks next year. Who's to say that they'll be in a position to get one of those guys? And who's to say, even if they do, that one of those 2 guys can be a franchise quarterback? You don't know that. A lot is yet to be determined. A year ago, if I would have told you 2 of the 3 quarterbacks drafted in round number 1 in this draft were going to be Carson Wentz and Paxton Lynch, if I'd have placed a prop bet, I would have won a lot of damn money. I'm pretty sure of that. We don't know how these things are going to play out. In terms of the Cleveland Browns, though, there were things that I liked. I will say this, trading down from 2 to 8, and then again from 8 to 15. If you were already going to make the move down from 2 to 8, I guess you might as well make the move down to 15. I love the selection of Corey Coleman in particular. He was a top 10 to 12 player in this draft to me. He was the number 1 wide receiver. For a team who had almost as big of a need at wide receiver as they did to find a young franchise quarterback, I thought they did really well to get themselves a big-time playmaker at Corey Coleman at number 15. It was an outstanding first-round pick for me based off of the situation. When you look at where they were at pick 8, I thought it was very wise for them to pass on the temptation to take a right tackle like Jack Conklin, trade down, get more draft pick currency for 2016, and importantly, more so even 2017. I thought that was really, really smart on the part of the Cleveland Browns. So there were things that they did well. And even when I look at some of the players they took throughout days 2 and 3, you know, Sean Coleman towards the end, or the middle portion, of round number 3. 24 years old, cancer survivor, the type of guy that you root for, you want to see successful. Is he a left tackle long-term at the NFL? I don't know. You did just let Mitchell Schwartz walk in free agency that for reasons that are still unbeknownst to me. But maybe Sean Coleman could step in and become a starting right tackle. If you get a starting right tackle in round number 3, it's a lot better than what the Tennessee Titans did trading up to take one at 8th overall. I'm just saying. I look at day 3, and I look at other solid value picks like Jordan Payton and Rashard Higgins. I thought, in terms of the wide receiver, now granted, they took 4 wide receivers and a wide receiver tight end hybrid in this draft, which to me was ridiculous. But I like the value they got in round 5 with both Peyton and Higgins. There's a part of me that thinks, you never know what, if anything, you're ever going to get again from Josh Gordon, that Corey Coleman, Jordan Payton, and Rashard Higgins could be your 1, 2, 3 guys in Cleveland for the next several years to come. And I would venture a guess between Jordan Payton and Rashard Higgins, at least one of them, safe bet, is an NFL starting number 2. Not bad in the 5th round. But to me, this was a draft of a lot of failures. You sit there, you bring in an offensive-minded head coach like Hugh Jackson, and even though I like both Emmanuel Ogbah and Carl Nassib, they took 2 defensive players, with 3 of their picks at the beginning of the draft. 2 of their first 3 picks were on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know about that. Especially in round 2, where early on you're in a position, you're the Cleveland Browns, you've got all this draft pick currency. You're in a position, you can have your choice, Jalen Smith, Miles, Jack. You have to pull that trigger. If you valued Ogbah that much, then you know what? You've got so much draft pick currency, figure out a way to make it happen. You can make a move up. And they didn't do it. And I thought that was a huge mistake. I also thought it was a huge mistake for this team not to trade up into the tail end portion of round number 1. You had so much draft pick currency over the next couple of drafts. You easily could have pulled this off without really hurting you all that much. In fact, it would have made more sense because you could have gotten another potential impact player in round 1 and had that 5th guaranteed year on the rookie deal. For all this talk about analytics, the analytics seem kind of broken to me. I mean, I question the trade down from number 2 to number 8 more than I do the trade down from 8 to 15 because I thought they did well for themselves with both the picks that they got and the players that they took at Corey Coleman. But passing up a potential franchise quarterback, and then in round 3 you're taking Cody Kessler? I mean, Jesus Christ. For a quarterback guru coach type in Hugh Jackson who values guys with strong arms, why would you take the most noodle-armed prospect in this entire draft class in Cody Kessler? Alex Smith and Chad Pennington call him noodle arm. And that's saying something. I mean, I just don't get it. And then, like I said, early round 2, you're in a position to get Miles Jack. You're in a position to get Jalen Smith. They don't get it. No trading up for the second first-round pick. You take a total of 5 wide receiver types, but not a single running back. This was a good running back class. There was value to be had there. Instead of reaching massively for a Ricardo Lewis or a Seth DeValve in round number 4, maybe that's where you pull the trigger on a Paul Perkins. Maybe that's where you pull the trigger on somebody like a Jordan Howard. Or even round 5, you pull the trigger on somebody else. I thought that was a huge mistake. 2 of your first 3 picks on the defensive side of the ball when you bring in an offensive-minded coach, the drafting of Cody Kessler, and at the end of the day, you look at this team. There were some good picks mixed in there. But what's their identity? What are they trying to build? Who are the Cleveland Browns trying to be? When you have a new regime, you would think as much as anything else, you're trying to establish an identity. You cannot look at this draft and, to me, view it as an identity draft. I thought it was largely a miss. I don't care about the draft picks acquired in the future because you look at here. Was the execution all that great here? I don't think so. Whereas the New York Giants are getting Paul Perkins in the 5th round and Jarrell Adams in the 6th round, the freaking Cleveland Browns are taking Ricardo Lewis and Seth DeValve in round number 4. Who? Exactly. That's why I gave him a D+. Part of the reason, frankly, I gave him the D+ is only because I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that they will sit there and do something positive with the additional picks they've acquired in the next 2 drafts. But looking at what I saw in this draft, there's no reason to really believe that. Now, I know a lot of Steelers fans are frustrated because they look at this draft and they don't particularly like what they saw. And I could see that. They feel like Artie Burns was a massive reach in round 1. They feel that Gerald Hawkins was a massive reach in round 4. I could understand that because I think Hawkins was a reach in round 4. Burns was a reach in round 1. But at the same point in time, this is a team we've been talking about for so many years that had to address the secondary. Fails to continue to address the secondary for reasons that are unbeknownst to us. And finally, they addressed the secondary with 2 good athletes in the first 2 rounds. And, of course, Steeler fans are upset, in particular with the first-round pick. Now, granted, I like the selection of Sean Davis in round 2 more than I like the selection of Artie Burns in round 1. To me, I would have preferred a William Jackson for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially since the Bengals cock-blocked him at 24 and took him. Maybe the Steelers could have explored trading up to 22 or 23 to make sure they got their dude. Or maybe it wasn't going to work at all because of that wide receiver run that happened 21 through 23. But with that said, when it comes to Artie Burns, There's plenty to like out of him. I think he's got a good story type of guy, again, that you want to root for. He's got size, he's got speed, he's got athleticism. Yes, in some ways he needs to learn better technique, and needs to learn how to play the corner position. But, you'll have these type of picks every year towards the tail end of round number 1. A couple of teams gamble on size and speed and athleticism. And Artie Burns, I think, if you were going to gamble on somebody late in round 1, it wasn't the worst gamble. It wasn't the worst reach I saw in this draft. And again, it addresses a massive need. This was a thing where the Steelers had to do this here. They had no choice. Then to follow it up with Sean Davis in round 2, I thought was solid. Javon Hargrave in round 3, as long as they don't try and play him with the nose tackle, I thought was pretty solid. Yes, Hawkins was a reach at round 4, but I thought Matakevich from Temple was a tremendous value pick at the 7th round. I don't know if he makes the Steelers roster. I don't know if he ever plays for them, but he should. If he doesn't, he should make it somewhere else. But I can see why Steeler fans aren't impressed with this draft. They probably thought of other names than Artie Burns at 25. They probably thought of other names than Gerald Hawkins around 4. They probably thought of other names just in general. It wasn't a great draft. It wasn't a terrible draft for them. I just gave them a C grade. It was kind of an average performance to me. The Cincinnati Bengals, to me, are a team that I've liked watching in recent years in the draft because by and large their philosophy is, and it hasn't worked out every single time with every single pick, mind you, but a lot of times they just kind of sit put and let things happen and let players fall, and then they get good value early on. And when you look at this draft early on, the first several picks, by and large, made a lot of sense. They were positions of need, but they were good talents, and they went about where they should in the draft. Frankly, out of their first 5 picks, the only pick that I really questioned in terms of being perhaps a reach and the position that they took was Nick Vigil, the linebacker at Utah State, in round number 3. This is a team that's invested in a lot of picks in recent years into the linebacker position. I didn't know if they needed to address linebacker again in round number 3 here. I just didn't know if that was necessary. But I look at William Jackson at 24. Yes, in recent years they've taken Dre Kirkpatrick and Darquise Dennard. But you look, William Jackson, he was the number 1 rated corner on my board. He's there at 24. You kind of got to take him at that point in time, especially because you failed to trade up, to get a wide receiver. You had that run of Fuller, Doxson, Treadwell. As a result, the Bengals are sitting there, and you look at the board and how it's laid out. William Jackson makes sense. Round 2, Tyler Boyd. Pretty good value there. I thought he made a lot of sense for them. Then you look at rounds 4 and 5. This is where you can argue the Bengals did the best in this draft, and as well as anybody. Andrew Billings, to me, was a late first-round talent. I know most other teams probably in the NFL probably had him as a grade of round 2 to round 3, but they still got him here towards the tail end portion of round 4. I don't give a damn if he was top-heavy. I don't give a damn if teams were concerned about his pass rush potential. There were not 100-something guys in this draft to me better than Andrew Billings, but yet the Bengals were able to draft him in a position where you would think just that. Brilliant. And then Christian Westerman, the guard from Arizona State, one of the top guards in a weak guard class. But to get him here at this portion of the draft in round number 5 was tremendous value. Tremendous value. And it seems like the Bengals now every year seem to find, for the most part, a couple of guys that can contribute. And they seem to find good value. There's not a lot of massive reaches. They don't have to trade. They just get guys. And I thought this was another one of these drafts for them, and I gave them a solid B on this draft. I don't know how much star potential they got out of this draft. I don't know how much they got in terms of big impact type of players, but I think they got several guys that could play and potentially start for them soon at the NFL level. I think the big winners in the division, even though, again, I really like the Bengals' performance, were the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I wasn't huge on Ronnie Stanley at pick 6. To me, he does reek of an Ozzie Newsome pick in round 1, more of a double, maybe a triple than he was a home run. But I think at the end of the day, even though to me there were better players and better offensive tackles on the board, and even though I think there's a part of me that believes they made a mistake passing Alarmy Tunsil, even in spite of all of this, or made a bigger mistake, which I think they actually made a bigger mistake not selecting DeForest Buckner at number 6, I look at Ronnie Stanley and I say, worst case scenario, he'll be a slightly better version of Eugene Monroe. He'll be a solid left tackle for 8 to 10 years. And you know, at the end of the day, you get a guy like that at number 6. That's not that bad. I thought the Ravens did really well in days 2 and 3 of the draft. I love Correa and Kaufusi. They needed young, athletic edge rushers, and they got 2 of them. Correa has great explosiveness off the edge, and Kaufusi has size and length that the Ravens really prefer out of their 3-4 edge rushers, to the point where when you play some type of hybrid defense, you run some 4-3 looks or some 4-down looks, You know, you can put Kaufusi there. You've got different options for what you could do. But they needed to get some edge rushers, and the good thing for them in this case, I thought they got a decent value in Correa here in round 2. Although they were originally in position to draft Miles Jack, maybe they should have just done that. And then Kaufusi in round number 3, again, I thought was a really good value. A lot of people talk about day 3 and talk about the 5 fourth-round picks and how all these guys could contribute, and they're potentially right. I especially look at guys like Tavon Young and Willie Henry and Kenneth Dixon, and I think they're all guys that could contribute for them. I really love the selection in particular of Tavon Young and Kenneth Dixon, but even guys like Chris Moore and Alex Lewis, maybe they wouldn't have been my pick for them at that point in time in round 4, but I still think they were solid picks for them in round 4. Even later on, you know, Judon, the edge rusher from Grand Valley State, Keenan Reynolds, Marcus Canady. I look at the Ravens draft, and it's full of doubles. It's full of triples, maybe a couple of singles. There might not be any home runs, but there is a part of me that almost looks at this draft class that says out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 picks, I wouldn't be surprised if 9, if not 10 of them make the roster right away, if 6 of them aren't valuable contributors for this team for the next 3-4 years. I thought this was a pretty good performance by the Baltimore Ravens, and Ozzie Newsome, a lot better performance than, in my opinion, he's had the past couple of years. And as a result, I gave him a grade of a B+. I would have given him a higher grade if they would have taken Laremy Tunsil. Based off of it being the Ravens, I might have given him an even higher grade if they would have taken DeForest Buckner over Ronnie Stanley. That's the one that, you know, either 3 years from now you'll laugh at me for saying this, or you'll look back and say, God, Jeff, you were absolutely right. They should have taken Buckner over Stanley, number 6. I wasn't a fan of the first-round pick. When I look at the entirety of it and the type of draft that it was and who Ozzie Newsome is and what this draft kind of represents, it makes a lot of sense, and I thought it was a good, solid performance for them, and frankly, the Cleveland Browns could take some notes.